A short time ago in a galaxy nearby, a podcast was made to inspire and entertain. Casual Space. Making space available, one story at a time. Your host with grace, Beth Mund.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Casual Space this week. Well, I have the privilege of introducing to you to someone else who is also a podcast host that talks about quite literally the space, in the space. It's Shawn Linam. And this week, she's my special guest where we turn the tables. She's on the other side of the mic, and we get to talk about her podcast, In Her Orbit, what it was like to work as a NASA Johnson Space Center astronaut trainer, and how it all started for her, which isn't how you thought it might have been. It wasn't through dreaming of rockets and looking through telescopes. No, Shawn started as a candy striper, and that is a hilarious story you're going to really enjoy. I know I'm still laughing and smiling when I'm thinking about it. This time, this is a candid conversation. It really is two colleagues who have a very similar path and have a lot of the same struggles, and maybe you share them as well. What is it like to be a female in this industry, in the space or exploration or science industry? What is it like to balance your career and a family, to be a mom and a CEO or entrepreneur? There's so many things together that we really got to kind of talk shop with, and I'm really looking forward to sharing it with you too. Now, before I get started, don't forget, you're going to check out Shawn and In Her Orbit podcast, wherever you also listen to and enjoy Casual Space. It's my pleasure and my honor to introduce you to Shawn. Please check her out and enjoy this episode right here. Let's get started. Hi, Shawn. Welcome to Casual Space.
Hi, Beth. Thanks for having me.
It's so good to have another fellow podcast host join me.
Well, I don't feel like a podcast host compared to you. When I listen to your voice, I'm just in awe of how smooth and amazing
No.
it is.
You're so sweet. I mean, keep going. No, I'm just kidding.
But no, it's been super fun, and it's one of those muscles that you get better with practice, and so starting to be much more comfortable. I'm really enjoying it.
Well, I know that a lot of people who listen to Casual Space listen to yours, In Her Orbit. If you haven't yet, Shawn's podcast brings some of the most amazing women forward and showcases them truly uniquely. I was an honored guest to be on yours. Thank you so much. Now you're here and I get to put you in the hot seat, which, let's be honest, we can handle this, right? We've been in the hot seat before.
Absolutely. I don't know yet which is easier or harder, being the interviewer or being the guest. I thought being the interviewer was going to be the easiest, but it's harder than it looks.
I know. Sometimes I find myself thinking to myself, this is a good question the audience wants to know. And even though you know the answer to it, you have to ask it. And every now and then the guest will be like, you already know that answer. And I'm like, yes, I do. But I'd like the audience to know. So sometimes I just say that. I said that in the last podcast. And I said, then I came off really cocky. And I was like, I think I need to edit that out because I said, I already know the answer to this, but the audience needs to know blah, blah, blah. And I think he was a little caught off guard. And I'm like, I did not ask that right. So I'm still learning too, Shawn.
Well, it's been a great experience. And, we profile women because as a woman-owned small business and also the mother of two young adult daughters now, it was really on my heart to profile women and encourage other women and inspire other women. And what it's ended up doing is inspiring me.
That's how it goes.
I want a do-over. I have 15 different career paths I'd now like to take.
Right? There's so many more than when we started. That is so true. So that's great that you get inspired. I do too. That is half the reason of the show. And I feel sometimes very selfish because when I look for very special guests like you, I am looking for that inspiration. I do need a jump start in the hard work we do and a kind of a revisit of like, Beth, you're doing big things. Shawn, you're doing it as well. And we're walking together. And so I love being able to support you in your work and just talk shop today. This has been great. What has been one of the guests, or what particular question do you find is woven through?
Well, we clearly start with the standard, how did you get your start? What inspired you for, love of the space industry, or love of space? So that is, an obvious one. But I think the more subtle nuances that were woven through is, I mean, clearly we're profiling women, but just the unique aspects of being a woman in any industry, really. So the podcast, I've had women that don't work in the space industry and girls that aren't even interested in the space industry, but that are still inspired and encouraged, because they're like, oh, it really is hard to have family and career, and oh, you actually can't balance it. You maybe can integrate it, but you can't balance it. And we don't uh, focus on questions around being a woman, but yes, definitely weave it into the conversation of, how is it, how have you managed it?
It
How
lands
have
there.
you managed
Yeah.
being a woman? Yes.
Right. Well, in this industry, certainly. So
Yes.
let's start there, since this is one of your questions and everyone would love to know, how did you get your start in the industry?
Well, I don't have the start of so many of my guests, or in yours too, I'm sure, where they knew they loved space from, the age of 3, age of 5. Mine was more, I'm old enough that still remember, well, I don't know that I remember, but, Apollo days. And, but in my mind, space was for, men, because that's who the original astronauts are, and also scientists. So I remember the, images of these men in these white lab coats with the pocket
Mm.
protectors. And so that's the vision I had of NASA. And so when I was, but when I was in school, I always was praised, encouraged for being smart. And I tell the story when I speak to girls and actually young people of all ages. Like my ambition was, I wanted to be a cheerleader. I wanted to be Miss America. I wanted to be a mom. Like I was a girly girl, but no one encouraged me in those areas. They always like, you're smart. So eventually I'm like, well, okay, I have to do something smart. And I didn't know what that even meant. And but I knew I liked, I wanted something that would help people. So I learned about biomedical engineering,
Oh,
and I learned that people were doing that degree to then go to med school. And I'm like, that's a great solution, because then if I don't want to go to med school or don't get in, then I have the engineering to fall back on. Um, I don't know that I really knew what it meant to be an engineer. I just thought it was hard. And so majored in biomedical engineering. Did turn out I didn't go to med school. A, I didn't make that great of grades. But B, I got queasy very easily.
really?
Would go into hospitals and, about pass out. So, or you could just
From what? From
describe.
what? The blood draw, or like
Oh,
a,
I could even stand that, but if someone being in pain, so
oh,
or even, yeah, so if anyone described pain, like one time I was just in a interview with a man who worked on an artificial heart, and he was just describing, the process of the patients that he dealt with, and I had to put my head between my legs and, like breathe into a bag. Needless to say, I didn't get that internship. But,
did that
so
surprise you? Had you
I,
know, like, did you quietly study and things were fine? And then when it was presented in front of you, the reaction came?
it did surprise me, but it shouldn't have, because in high school, I volunteered as a candy striper, and I almost passed out doing that. So I didn't last at it very long, but I didn't really like connect that, oh, this is a problem. It was, I just connected it to like this overall bad experience as a
Okay,
candy
so
striper.
how did you step into candy striping then? Were you just,
I don't even, I know a friend of mine and I decided we wanted to be candy stripers in the hospital, and we signed
oh,
up and went through all the training. And um, then my first day, and they told us things like, this was a Catholic hospital, so I think the nuns were,
Sure.
I think the nurses were mostly nuns, or nuns worked in the hospital. I can't remember, but there was this whole rule about like rolling people on a stretcher. It could be two nurses, but it had to be, or two candy stripers and a nurse, or four candy
Oh my
stripers. Like
gosh.
this was the rule. So my first day, I remember walking by and like some man was stark naked, an older gentleman who I think had some dementia. He's stark naked, holding his bedpan, so that's one exposure. And
Mhm.
I'm like, oh, I wasn't expecting this. And then,
Oh, you're
but
so
then
young.
yes, so ninth grade. And my second time, they had me wheel this woman on a stretcher by myself from her room to the ER to have some sort of test done. And I'm like, okay, this is against the rules, but I'm being told to do this. Like, I didn't know what to do. I didn't feel like I could refuse. So I took her down, and then I could hear her screaming while I waited in the hall for her. And so I really had to put my head between my legs then. And then I look over and see a family friend and think, "Ooh, a friendly face."
Yeah.
And he was white as a ghost because he thought he was having a heart attack. So it was just this
Oh,
whole
what a
and
stressful environment.
yes. So needless to say, I didn't go
Oh
back
my
for the
gosh.
third candy striper volunteer session.
Wow. Oh, that was
But
just in the first two. Oh my
yeah, that's the
gosh.
first two. But I didn't connect that, oh, I might pass out if I become a doctor. So I think you
Oh.
still, they say you get over that if you actually push through it.
Well, do
But
you, I mean, as a mom now, have you anything that,
hmm, that's a good point. I only had, thank goodness, one um, emergency with either of my children where we had to go to the hospital.
oh
And
boy.
yes, I made it through the piece I had to make it through, but yeah, I had to immediately then run to the restroom and be sick. So,
Oh my gosh.
yes.
It's just part of being a mom, right? You're like, oh my
Right.
gosh, I got to handle this. And you just figure it out. And then,
Right.
I think you get that gift as a mom, but then you're surprised at how your body's going to process that stress and trauma because you got
Mhm.
to stay strong. You got to help the kid resolve, whether that's getting to the hospital or being strong in the hospital or taking care of the wound on the way to the hospital or whatever it is. And then your body has to process it. And I think that's the part that we as females, it's like you might not see it, but it is being processed.
Mhm.
And we might
Yes.
not show it so evidently through tears or crying or stress or, deep breaths of relief or punching bag. That's just not our way, but it is being processed. It is.
Well, and I think, I never really thought about it until you just asked, but like, I had a car accident once that was severe enough that I was eventually in a lot of pain. But, at first I wasn't in any pain. And so that adrenaline is
Oh,
just an
yeah.
incredible drug until it wears off. And so I'm wondering if that's the same type of thing that gets you through some of the crisis with your kids or just in
Right.
general, that adrenaline. But then when it's gone, you collapse and
Uh,
yeah,
yeah,
in
sure
massive
do.
pain.
But
Yeah.
you've got this engineering degree now, and the world
Yes.
is your oyster. So where did you land it?
So I couldn't find a job because graduated with a biomedical engineering degree, and it was the types of things that you could do with that were limited at the time to like designing hospital gowns or being in sales. And I did try the sales route, but I didn't really have the personality or the confidence for it at the time. And then I was too tired, or maybe again, not confident enough to go on to graduate school, which is what I really needed to do with that degree. Also, I decided I didn't really like engineering. So that was a problem. So I took a job in fluid power,
Oh,
um, teaching mostly like maintenance and factory workers on factory automation. how pneumatics, electropneumatics, and programmable controls worked.
Ooh.
And that was a great job for building confidence, because I had to learn. They were 4-day classes where I was speaking all day, every day, on my feet. It was technical subject, so I was teaching everything, from how the pneumatic circuits work to troubleshooting faults and things like that. So really confidence building. Terrible industry as a woman. It was.
Oh.
So I was the first woman this German company had ever hired in a technical position, and the president, the U.S. president, who was German of the company, I think had 8 sexual harassment lawsuits against him at the time. At a time when it wasn't even common to have sexual harassment lawsuits
Uh-oh.
yet.
Uh-oh.
And so this was the industry, and Anna boy broke my heart, so that I worked with. So between all of those things, I'm like, I can't work here anymore.
Oh
And
gosh.
started looking around for a job. At
That
the time,
in Germany, or was that here in the US?
no, it was in the U.S.
Okay.
in
Okay.
New York on Long Island.
Okay.
And so started looking for a job. I was in a wedding. I was the maid of honor, and the best
Oh.
man worked at NASA, and he trained astronauts. And he said, "Oh, well, you have an engineering degree, and you know how to do training. That's all you need to train astronauts." And I went, "Okay, that sounds cool." So
Do you remember? Can you share his name? Who was it?
Oh, his name is Ronald Lee. So, and he still works at Johnson Space Center.
Does he?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
And so I sent him my resume, and he sent it around to all the people that were hiring at the time, and I got hired in the early days of working on space station.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Now we have maybe discussed this before. I'm so sorry, I don't recall. Were we there at the same time? Were we at
I
JSC
think
at
I
the
was
same time?
there before you were. So
I
I was
think
there in
so.
the
Okay.
90s. Yeah.
Yeah, and I had just come right at 99 and
Okay.
into the 2000s. So, wow. Okay, so let's get into it. Were you intimidated by having to train the astronauts? Did you learn from them? Was it super fun every day coming to work? What was your day like? What was it to start?
I knew nothing about the space industry. I had paid a little attention, but in fact, on my way, right before going, I went on a ski trip with family and friends, and we were playing a trivia game, and they were all excited when we got NASA programs as our, topic. And I'm like, I don't know any of them. So I was no help at all. And I'm like, oh, great, I'm going to go work here. So,
No,
so
it's funny how family does that. Family and friends, they always do that, right? They're like, "Oh, you work at NASA? Do you know Bob?" And you're like, "There's thousands of people, but it's so
yeah.
cute." And they think NASA is all, they think you know everything there is to know at NASA.
Oh,
And you're
right.
like, "That's not how it works."
Right. Or yes, you
That's
work
okay.
on like operations, and they think you know everything about astronomy, or
Sure.
yes.
Right, right.
But anyway, yes, when I got to NASA, it was like I said, working Space Station Mission Operations Directorate, which is the training, flight controller, planning, scheduling for Space Station. And Gene Kranz was still the head of MOD at that time, and he was coming over to our building every morning for a 7 a.m. briefing on all of the space station systems. So that's what I was put into every morning. Be there, because that's how you're going to learn about the space station. And
From the best of the best. I mean, wow. Wow.
well, he was learning just also, but
Oh,
yes,
he
he was
wasn't teaching. Okay, I
no,
see.
he all the engineers were presenting their system or their project to
Ah,
him to also
okay.
learn. And I just remember thinking, this is a foreign language. All the acronyms, I did not understand anything. And I
So
went
true.
home so
So
depressed
true.
after the first week. Like, I don't know if I can learn this language. This is too hard.
Did you have a meeting in the FICR or the white FICR? I mean, like, right? This
Yes.
sounds like a word. It's not. It's an acronym. Or the
Right.
MOD, right? You
Yes,
said
right.
already all these. Yeah, we could acronym the whole rest of this conversation.
Right.
It is overwhelming.
And then some of the acronyms are dual use. So now you have to know which context that acronym is in, because,
That's right.
Yeah. So,
NASA.
Yes. So, and we weren't, it was still in the development stages. So we weren't training any astronauts yet. So I wasn't intimidated from that standpoint yet. I was just intimidated by learning this new language.
Being at NASA, it is
Yes,
overwhelming.
yes.
Things are ever evolving and happening all around you all the time. Nothing is ever standing still, very rarely. So
the great part of it was, I said, the industry I came out of was so male dominated, chauvinistic. And so suddenly I'm hired with numerous female engineers. And that was so refreshing, and just also confidence building. Like, okay, like, immediately became close friends with some women who are still my friends to this day, and could say, I don't know if I can figure this out. I don't know if I can learn all these acronyms. And just immediately had that encouragement and, I guess, sisterhood. I never had any trouble being taken seriously, and like I said, I really enjoyed having other female engineers to work with and be friends with. What I did struggle with more is, well, I'll just give you one story and we will leave out the names. But one of my colleagues, who was wonderful and lovely, but he had a poster of a bikini-clad woman over his desk, and I said, after looking at it over and over again, finally I said, I find that offensive. And he's like, why? And I said, well, because it objectifies women. And, this was, I don't even know if that's the word I used, because language has changed now, but that was the message.
Right.
And
right.
he said, well, I don't understand, but I'll take it down. And so that was actually, again, refreshing, because I think I had a similar conversation with someone at my first job, and he's like, I don't care. It's staying up,
Yeah.
And then, working at NASA with so many young people, yes, there were times more the like romantic interests and all were distracting from trying to do your job. In fact, one of my friends gave me a list, and she's like, okay, here's all the men that will ask you out in this order when you arrive here.
Oh my gosh.
So
she had it down to the order. I love it.
Yes. So it was, there were aspects of it that were very fun, because you're young. And of course, where are you going to meet people? Like you do, I ended up marrying somebody that I worked with. So
me too, at NASA. There you go.
NASA's a great place to find a husband. But,
oh my gosh.
But at the same time, there were times then it was negative.
Sure. Like any workplace. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
no, how many years at NASA?
6 years.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So it's always a hard decision to leave, but depending on what you're leaving for. So NASA has the reputation, and it has the opportunities, and it has the complexities. So, it's not perfect. I know it's really looked highly upon, and it will forever be the institution and, organization that took us to the moon and helped us launch our space program for our nation. But again, it's not perfect. So when you left, how did this decision arrive, and where did you go to from NASA?
So when I left, by then I was married. So now there's two of us that need to be employed. But I was young and ambitious, and it was a time I had switched from space station to shuttle. And so I was doing shuttle training Well, it was around the time that USA was taking over all the shuttle operations. And by then I was also a civil servant. I started as a contractor working for Barrios Technology, and then I switched and became a civil servant. And then they said, well, civil servants can't train shuttle anymore. So I was back on space station. And space station still hadn't flown at this point. So I'm like, it's never going to fly, you know? And my husband and I both got recruited to work Iridium, which is how we ended up in Phoenix. And Iridium was the first large constellation, which was 66 satellites, so small by comparison now, but the first constellation of satellites, commercial program. And so I thought, I don't want to be part of this bureaucracy anymore where I'm told what I can and can't work on. And little did I know that that's all of life. So we left to work Iridium. And it was a hard decision because my husband, we're now divorced, but at the time, he was a civil servant as well. And so you don't give up 2 civil servant slots to go do something risky. And I think we were naive enough to know we didn't know it was risky, but yeah, that ambition and wanting to do something different, we followed that. So I actually did training for the Iridium initial cadre of operators. And so that was a whole new experience, even though it was still training. But eventually Iridium goes bankrupt. In fact, one story, I did training on STS-69, and the commander for that mission was Dave Walker, who's since passed away. But he and a former JSC director, I used to travel out to Leesburg, Virginia often, and I would go through Houston because I was still, high mileage on Continental. And so Dave and I think his name was Jerry, get on my plane and they're sitting right behind me. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And so he's asking what I'm doing. And I told him working Iridium. He goes, Iridium? He's like, oh my gosh, that's never going to make it. I made my stockbroker sell Iridiums, they tried. And I'm like, gosh. That was the first time anyone had said that to me. And I'm like, oh no. And he turned out to be right. Well, it did make it, but they did go bankrupt and space station flew before Iridium. But so when Iridium went bankrupt, our company closed their Phoenix office. And so my husband and I both worked there, both get laid off.
Oh my gosh.
No lie. They waited for me to get back from maternity leave to lay me off, as I think you can't lay somebody off while they're on maternity leave. And so, had a 2-year-old and a 2-month-old and got laid off. So no time like that to start a company.
Oh my gosh.
Well, wasn't feeling very marketable, but yeah, my husband and one other business partner and I started Qualtech when we all 3 got laid off from Cytor, was the company we were working for at the time.
Wow. Oh my gosh. And how did that decision come to be? And how did 3 people honestly come to agreement and say, this is a natural progression for us to move into this, even though had anyone been an entrepreneur or a business owner before, or just startup experience? Or was it just like, let's just go for it?
It was the latter. I think, it was funny in high school when I used to dream. I did have a dream of being a CEO of a company. It was going to be in Manhattan, and it was going to be like a penthouse office overlooking the city. But I didn't know of what. It just, I had this dream of being a CEO for some reason. But yeah, I had the little entrepreneur bug, and I can't even remember when it started. Maybe it started at NASA because I didn't like being told what to do. I didn't like, having my path guided, as you said, or determined for me. And so we had, because Cytor closed the whole Phoenix office, we had some pursuits that we were, because when Iridium went bankrupt and that contract was gone, we did have some pursuits we were going after to try and get ourselves covered on a contract. And so Cytor decided not to pursue those. So they novated those pursuits to us. And there was one that we just thought, I don't know, we thought we had this 97% chance, don't ask me where we came up with that number, that it was going to close. And it was doing training for the DirecTV satellites back in the day. And I remember we sat at a coffee shop and said, okay, if we don't think we're getting this contract, it's too risky to start a business. But we think that, we've got in the industry, it's called P-win, the percentage win chance. We think we have a P-win of 97%. I don't know how we calculated that. Well, we didn't get that contract, but we had already started the business by then. So everything was in place. And we were pursuing some other contracts at the same time. And so we got, through our network and are able to sell ourselves, we actually got about 4 small contracts months after we started the business. So we were profitable our first year, and we started in May. So
wow,
yeah, thanks. I mean, I look back at it now and I go, how? Like, if you knew what was involved, I would have been scared to death and thought there's no way this can happen. Like, now I can't close a contract that fast to save my life. But yeah, it was
necessity was involved. Oh my gosh. And probably a little like fearlessness. Like, let's just go for it.
Fearlessness, maybe a little naivete,
healthy dose.
Yes.
A healthy amount. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. But also, I mean, my gosh, the young kiddos, I would love to go back to this because you have had so much to balance. And I don't know sometimes how we muddle through this. What are your go-tos? Do you have a team of ladies? Do you have friends in the industry? Do you do karate and punch a bag on Wednesdays? What is it that works for you?
So I did not have go-tos. I did not have good balance. In fact, my kids will be the first to say that, and my daughter, in a nice way publicly, is like, you were a very stressed mom. But they were still fairly young, but, old enough to remember, in grade school, I think. And, my husband's like, you got to get it together. Like, you can't bark orders at everyone. You can't bring all this stress home. And I wasn't happy. I was, all day was either work or kids and nothing from, people talk now about me time. Well, nobody talked about me time then. And, or if they did, I wasn't listening. And so I thought I have to do something different. And 2 different things came along. One, I think if I hear anything 3 times, I know I'm supposed to do it. And 3 different people told me, you need to try yoga. And I had never been to yoga in my life. And I'm like, oh, that's for, I don't know, calm people. I'm not calm. But that's why you need to do it. But so I went to yoga. It was life-changing. Yes, it calmed me down. In fact, it got to the point where when I started to get stressed, my girls are like, Mom, go to yoga. And then about the same time, there was a woman that had a charity running for children, and it was called Chances for Children, I believe. And it was a running club, but you raised money. And so we did, I ended up doing 2 half marathons, one here in Phoenix and one in New York. I'm not a runner, but I became a runner.
Wow.
These, I met such a great group of people. I loved the race environment. I ended up not continuing because I wanted to keep my knee. I'm not a runner, and I wanted to keep my knees and my Achilles through old age. But it just really, both the yoga and the running was like, oh, this is why you need time for yourself, and you need things outside of job and kids, and then that'll make you a better mom, a better leader, a better everything, if you're not just a pent up ball ready to explode.
It's funny how that works, right? You have to do more to get more relaxed.
Yes.
It's so crazy. It's so counterintuitive, but true. Sometimes the busiest people, and I see it now in students, the busiest students are enjoying being a student, if that makes sense. It's the students that aren't busy that are struggling. Maybe they're in their own heads. Maybe they haven't found their sense of self, or maybe they just haven't found the fun stuff or the, purpose behind it. And that was me. I was such a late bloomer. I didn't find anything until so much later, but I'm glad you did, because wow, balancing a new company, the children, everything going on. And let's just be honest, starting a company in and of itself is enough. It's huge. And then everything else you had going on too. So you found some outlets. Tell us now. Now, what is your days like? Now, what are you working towards? And now, what's on the horizon?
Well, now, so my company is very different now. There were three of us that started it, and I had we could do a whole nother podcast on this, but my company was not the reason for the divorce. In fact, it probably kept us together longer, but essentially had a personal divorce and a business divorce. So they say not to go into business with family or friends, and I did both. And so we all had different objectives. We had different timelines on when we wanted an exit strategy out of the company. Everyone said you need to know your exit strategy before you start. I'm like, I don't know what an exit strategy is. So so we didn't do that. We didn't follow that advice. It is excellent advice. If you're starting a business with other people, know your exit strategy before you get started. And if you also don't know what that means, it means how are you going to exit the business? So do you want to sell the business? Do you want to all be carried out on a stretcher? Do you want to leave it to your family? And we had three different objectives. I was the carry me out on the stretcher. And the other two had a more defined time they wanted to get out. So I have bought them out. And so I'm the sole owner of the company now. So it's very different. And then post-COVID, not as many people in the office, are not in the office at all. We're based all over the U.S. now. And so it's, and my kids are grown. So my kids are young, 24 and 26, and starting their way in the world. And so still very busy, but very different kind of busy than when you're being a mom to young kids and starting a business. But I think the same advice is still true. You still have to take time for yourself. You still have to focus. But now I'm focused more on, okay, what is my exit strategy now? The carrying me out on the stretcher doesn't sound as appealing as it once did. That, there may be other things that I would like to do someday. So now, and also with just me, what's the succession planning for the business? So working on that, but still have big ambitions, that would like to see come to fruition before exiting. So I'm not planning to exit anytime soon, but at least looking at that moving forward.
This new Artemis class has blown me away. They are so personable, so excited, so involved. They're not like, okay, I have to check this box and then do PAO and outreach over here. They are touching and they're in it 24/7 all the time. It's really cool to watch this next generation of astronauts, and they're being so transparent with how they're training and getting ready and prepared, and they seem genuinely enjoying that journey where it's not. And there are some astronauts who, I'm just going to say names. Don Pettit is brilliant. He is incredible. And I don't know him as well as some of the others. There's a Don Pettit answer, which is so highly technical and generous and involved and really deep in the weeds. And then there's a Mike Massimino who's yeah, that was fun, wasn't it? And you just, the difference. It's such a difference. So I'm really I love when we can share these stories too. I hope you continue to have great guests that help you peek behind the curtain and show us that women can do it. What did you say in the beginning? Not necessarily have it all, but integrate it all.
Yes, not balance it, but integrate it. Yes, and accept that not everything is. There's going to be a lot of balls that drop, but that's okay.
Yeah. Yes, I would agree. Well, please come back on the show. Let's talk some more. This has been phenomenal. People can definitely find you and listen to you on the In Her Orbit podcast. I highly recommend it. It was so much fun to sit and chat with you. I know we're going to be doing it again soon. And thank you again. We'll see you back on the show real soon.
Thanks, Beth. Thanks so much for having me.
If you enjoyed this episode, give it some stars by rating and reviewing it on your podcast platform. Embrace the space. Casual space.